And Dandavat to Shama Gopal Prabhu and Scarlett, and I think that's Axel. So as I said, mentioned just now to Chinmoy Prabhu, I have some interesting questions today. The first one, they're questions which I've never had before and which I never would have thought of asking. So the first one was, is hatred a real feeling? Can we really feel it? Very interesting question. And the other question is interesting too. What Haras Talker was chanting before Mahaprabhu inaugurated the chanting of the Maha Mantra. It's a really good question, actually, because actually the Maha Mantra is like a Vedic mantra, and only the Brahmins would have had access. And Haras Talker, he's coming from Muslim background, right? So that's an interesting question. What was Haras Talker chanting? I mean, he could have been chanting many different holy names of the Lord, but it's true, he may not have been chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Do you have any thoughts on that, Chinmoy Prabhu?
No, I don't. I imagine, yeah, names of the Lord. How do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many names, right? We hear in the second verse of Shikshastra, right? Nam Nama Kadi Bahuda, right? Bahuda means so many names of the Lord. Nija Sarva Shaktis, right? You've invested your power into all of those. So yes, we don't know. And it's an interesting question. Never heard it. Never thought about that. But we'll think about it and see if the answer comes up. The other question was, is hatred a real feeling? Can we really feel it? I mean, the thing is that actually everything has its reality, right? Right. But the question is, what type of reality? Is it a permanent, real reality, or is it a temporary, concocted reality based on relative truth, right? There's absolute truth and there's relative truth. There's truth that is based on permanence, eternal values, and then there's incomplete, partial truth, right? So, and from one standpoint, we can say everything is true, right? Everything has some degree of reality. You know, it is Mayavad conception that just kind of whitewashes over everything, right? So if someone is feeling that, then it has some level of reality, right? But we can say it is based on an illusory conception of the self, right? And based on temporary conceptions. And another thing is that everything in this world, we are told, is a perverted reflection, right, of the supreme reality, of the absolute reality. So everything in this world has its origin, right, in the spiritual world, in a pure way. And there's some perverted, twisted reflection of that coming into this world. And so what comes to my mind is we hear that there's some level of competition, right, in the spiritual world between different servitors of Krishna, you know, and there's a type of spiritual jealousy and a type of spiritual competition that comes up amongst the servitors of Krishna. And why is that so? It is to enhance the play of Krishna, right? It actually makes everything more exciting and more interesting, right? When there's some competition. It is like in a drama, right? It's boring to watch a movie where everyone's just happy all the time and everyone just likes each other all the time and everyone just gets along so well. That would be kind of boring, right? So, you know, there needs to be different parties, different sides, and there needs to be some good guys and some bad guys, and right, that's what makes things more juicy and more interesting. And that has its spiritual expression, which is actually all moving towards the satisfaction of Krishna. That is what we call Leela, the divine play of the Lord. And in this world, it is perverted because it is based on selfishness, right? It is based upon our self-interest, and it's all clashing. But just like if you watch a well-written movie script or well-written film, you'll see that the disharmony is actually leading to a greater harmony, right? And the troubles that the hero has to face, and the so-called bad guys, and they're actually enhancing the position of the hero. And there's an overall harmony that's coming out of apparent, disharmony, right? In different scenes, you'll see different conflict and different trouble, but they're all just parts of a whole, right? The whole is harmonious. Then after you watch the whole complete film, then you can appreciate the overall theme and the overall story, the overall, triumph of the hero and so on. But in this world, it's disordered because we're all acting out of self-interest, and everything's clashing. Everyone's clashing against one another, right? So if someone has hatred, anger that is connected with a something higher, then that is acceptable, right? Think of it like this: if Srila Sridhar Maharaj mentions, if I see someone is beating my father in front of me, then will I sit quietly? Oh, we will show some anger. We're not going to say, oh, everything's okay, everything is one, and it's all love, it's okay. Not a blade of grass moves without Krishna's will, so I'll just let this person come and, shoot everyone. No, that's a very impersonal, disconnected conception. Then we may show some anger in that moment, right? And within our heart, we may have some broader feeling of compassion for that person, but that doesn't mean we're not going to, put them in jail, and stop them from causing more trouble, and have some anger in that moment, right? For some cause. So, everything has its reality, but there's the temporary reality and there's the permanent reality. And when our reality is connected with Krishna's interest, then there's some purpose, there's some significance to it. So I don't have any more context on that question, so I can't really say more. I don't know if it's just some kind of philosophical question, or if it's a personal issue, or I don't know. Anyone else have any comments on the topic of hatred? Or here, the devotees are saying, well, we should talk about love. But that wasn't the question. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like in the moment, we can feel many things, right? Everything has some level of reality. Our senses, right? They have their reality. Our mind has its reality. Our intellect has its reality. Then the soul has its reality. And then there's super soul, right? And what is the life? What does the spiritual life mean? It means that we're living according to the reality of Atma and Paramatma, right? The soul reality. It means that we're overriding the reality of our senses. That's not easy, actually. We're overriding our immediate sense perception, and we're believing in something that we can't actually see very clearly right now, or feel very clearly right now. And in our current stage of realization, we play it safe, right? We don't want to imitate, generally, hatred is something that we'll avoid. Because, we're very polluted by selfishness. So we're careful with these things. But if we have some advanced level of devotion, then that feeling may come out, right? In connection with our Guru, with the Vaishnavas, the Lord, right? If we see someone is abusing, is attacking the devotees, our Gurudev, the Lord, then there may be some feeling of hatred, right? That doesn't mean we're going to start a jihad. We're not going to go and kill people. That's not our philosophy. Anyway, I better stop talking before I get myself in trouble. Does anyone have any other topics or comments?
Dandavas Vishakha Didi, Dandavas everybody.
Dandavad Prabhu Ramananda.
Yeah, you remind me, see, Guru Mai say, Tatte nu kampam. He said, tolerate whatever coming, it's coming from affectionate hand of the Lord. So we have to just tolerate and adjust ourselves. It's easy to say, but very difficult to follow. I think even Gurudev used to say. Yeah, other day I was in Sokhya, so I don't know if you heard Nandita Didi passed away. So they were talking about her. Yeah, Sanatani's sister-in-law, she passed away a few days ago, a week ago.
Oh.
Yeah. So we had nice feast, nice program. So different devotees are telling about her. Yeah.
I see. I see. Thank you for sharing, Ramananda Prabhu.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I see Kirtida has her hand raised.
Dandavat Vishakha Dasi.
Dandavad.
I'm sorry for my poor English.
No.
I have a question about the Jiva Atma and the term soul and spirit. Jiva Atma, is it two? Are we always two? And the Atma is the soul or spirit. What is Jiva? Jiva Atma.
Oh, wait, sorry, I couldn't understand you so clearly. You're saying what is the meaning of jiva?
Govinda Maharaj always said that we were Jiva Atma.
Right, right. Well,
Yes.
jiva is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Or will that say we are always two, one Jiva and Atma together?
I mean, as I understand, like Jivatma literally translates as living soul. Like Jiva is related to the word living, right? And Atma is soul. So yeah, sometimes our Gurudev would say simply Jiva. Sometimes it is expressed like that, the Jiva, but sometimes he's using it like synonymously, you know, Jiva or Atma, but your Jivatma, it simply means living soul.
Okay, and spirit and soul, Atma, is the same?
Yes, yes. Spirit, soul, Atma, yes, it is all the same, really.
Okay. I thought maybe Jiva was from Krishna and Atma was material.
No. Maybe you're thinking of Chit Shakti. Maybe you're thinking of that. Chit or Sarup Shakti. Maybe you're thinking of Sarup Shakti. Or
it's not so clear to me, so I'm listening and learning. Thank you.
Chinmoy, do you have any comments on that? You're always listening to Gurudev's lectures.
No, I think that's right. Spirit, soul. I mean, I've heard Jivatma translated as that, spirit, soul. Yeah, the living soul within us, our particle of consciousness, Jivatma.
Yes, and that consciousness too. Consciousness is that belonging to Atma.
Well, because consciousness is a part of the soul, right? The soul is Sat, Chit, and Ananda, right? Consciousness, the soul is eternal, Sat, Chit, conscious, and Ananda, joyful. These are three components of the soul. But see, the thing is, a lot of the time, these words, they just get used like synonymously, and we don't have to put so much importance. Like a conscious being, you know, or soul, like these phrases may be used synonymously, right?
Okay.
But consciousness, that you know, to be a soul, that presupposes having consciousness, right? Consciousness is intrinsically a nature of the soul. It is the nature of the soul intrinsically to be conscious, to have consciousness. Does that make sense? Or?
So the consciousness expands while we're living here, then grows.
Well, it is more that the consciousness is covered over, and it is, and through our spiritual practice, through grace, you know, through Vaishnava Kripa, right, the mercy of the Vaishnava, the Lord, the Guru, then the covers are becoming cleared, right? And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives that very helpful description of the 5 stages of consciousness. There's the Achadita Chetan, heavily covered consciousness, which is referring to stones and trees, immovable. Everywhere is consciousness, but it's just a question of how much it is covered, right? And then there's animals, animal life, more uncovered consciousness, and then there are different stages of human life, right? Mukulita Chetan, budding consciousness, Sankuchita Chetan, blossoming consciousness, Purna Vikashita, fully blossomed consciousness. But we can also say, and this is kind of an interesting point, that like the highest evolution, the highest attainment of the soul, it's not a right. It's not something that is completely the right of the soul, but it's given as a gracious grant, right? And that is you know, awakenment in the plane of divine service, right? In the positive, active, dynamic plane, Vaikuntha and beyond, right? And at the highest Goloka Vrindavan. That is like a big plus, right? Like, because our origin is Tatastha Shakti, right? This middle zone. And so anything beyond that is grace. Anything beyond is grace. I don't know if this is making sense. I suppose it is a bit of a hazy, complex subject matter. There was something else that came to mind, but I forgot to know. Does that answer your questions, Kirtida?
I contemplate and think about this.
Okay.
And I thought Jiva was like a point in the heart, and
no, I mean, no, Jiva just means like referring to living. You hear that word like Jiv, Jago, like wake up, you know, that Jivan, Jivaner, Jivan. Like if you look in our songs, that word is actually used a lot. Like Jivaner, it is referring to like living life. So
okay. Thank you, Vishakha Dasi.
Okay. I mean, a lot of times, like, you know, things are like words, different words are used, and we have to like look at the context and try and see the overall, because in different contexts, different words may be used in slightly different ways. So we have to look at the context. You know? So sometimes, you know, conscious being, you know, just means soul, you know. Anyway.
A positive and progressive evolution of consciousness, is that the Atma then?
Positive and progressive evolution of consciousness.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes, that's referring to the development of the Atma, of the soul. Yes.
Okay.
Positive and progressive evolution of consciousness. Beautiful. We have that the subtitle of Prapana Jivanamrita, positive and progressive immortality. And this is what is so wonderful about Vaishnavism, actually, because in the beginning of our Prapana Jivanamrita, there's a very nice introduction that was compiled from talks of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and he's discussing this very point, right? That generally this positive side is neglected in theology, right? Like what happened, it's more like we're here in this world and there's something beyond, right? Whatever that is, it's merging into Brahman, or it's going to heaven, or it's nirvana, right? We know there's something beyond, but what that actually is and what happens, like there's not so much discussion about that. But in Vaishnavism, that's something, there's so much clarity that's given, right? What is the nature of the evolution of the soul on the positive side? Like once you reach the plane of liberation, what happens after that, right? That's something discussed very extensively in Vaishnavism, and particularly we see in Mahaprabhu's conception, and particularly sweet also. Sweet, charming, loving, heart-fulfilling conception. But yes, it is a bit of a tricky thing, right? Because like up to a certain point, there's this, it's actually quite interesting. I never quite thought about it from this particular angle that we're discussing today. Because like up to a certain point, we're peeling away layers, right? The layers of the mind, the ego, the intellect. But then there's a certain point where we need grace, right? Because the yogis, and different schools of lines of renunciation, they can engage in different practices that can bring them to the point of soul, of realizing, oh, I'm Atma. But to go, and that's like Srila Sridhar Maharaj compares that to getting a passport. But then going beyond that, right? Connecting with the Sarup Shakti, like with that internal spiritual energy of the Lord into the eternal spiritual dynamic world of the Lord, that requires grace, right? That's actually where everything begins. This is why Krishna consciousness is so high, because our gurus are giving us something that's pretty much impossible, like for the conditioned soul. Our gurus are giving us the gift of the liberated souls. Our gurus are giving us what the liberated souls are qualified for, but they've also made an entry point. It's like, imagine like a big corporation that has like an entry point, like a grace program, right? Like single moms who, didn't get a chance to go to school, like they got an entry point for them. like seriously, like there's this beautiful verse, Rupa Goswami, Nikila Shuti Moli Ratnamala Duti Niraji Tapada Pankajanta Yi Mukta Kulera Pashamana Paditastvam Hadinam Samshayami. Beautiful verse of Rupa Goswami glorifying the holy name. And he's saying in this, one of the lines here, Ayi Mukta Kulera Pashamana, saying, like, my God, like the liberated souls are worshiping you. Like the liberated souls, they can properly approach you, right? That is what said you're high. Like what our gurus are giving us, it's a rare attainment for a liberated soul, right? And we're like very conditioned souls, like conditioned by the material energy. We're very fallen souls. But that fallenness also works in our favor because it makes us very humble. It's really like an impossible thing, like we hear Srila Sridhar Maharaj, she says we can put in the doors of our temples, welcome, no entrance. Like it's really an impossible thing. Like we don't actually realize how high it is, like Like we're singing in our arati songs, like Shiva, Shuka, Nada, Da'ar, Brahma, Diko. Like these aren't just liberated souls. These are like exalted demigods, right? Lord Shiva, Narada Muni, Shukadev Goswami, all the great Mahajans revered and worshipped in the whole Vedic tradition. They can't approach this, right? From a distance. This is beyond the scope of their understanding or approach, right? It is, but there's a grace program. You know, somehow we got in on that, right? It's really quite an interesting point. Because what is really the evolution of the soul? That begins on the other side. That actually begins from the point of liberation. That's what real evolution of the soul is. Because before that point, we're clearing away the layers. But this is the extraordinary thing, right? By the grace of our gurus, like we've, even in our low position, we've made a connection with this very high thing. And like simultaneously, like there's this purification that's taking place, this clearing that's taking place, but simultaneously, like they've planted that seed in our heart, right? And there's some growth. There's some tiny sprouting that's taking place at the same time. It's really quite an extraordinary thing. And we don't have anything else to do. we don't have anywhere else to go, you know. You know, even if we come to the point of realizing that, you know, it may take hundreds and thousands of lifetimes. We still have, because it's really, if we can have a glimpse of what a rare and precious and high prospect this is, you know, then just to know that we've come to it, that's enough. It's enough. And I was remembering today Rupa Goswami's prayer, you know, this the chatak bird, right? The chatak bird has nothing to do but to wait. Virachaya mayidandam dinabando dayamba vitiri hana bhavata chidanya mamasti nipata tu shatakotir nirbaram vanavambas tadapi kila payodas duyate chataki. That chatak bird is always singing the glories of the rain cloud. And sometimes the rain cloud doesn't give any rain, and sometimes gives too much rain. But still that bird never goes anywhere else. And not only that, but stuyate chatakena. That chatak bird is always glorifying the rain cloud and just waiting patiently. And will never take any drop of water from the ground, never. But it's just waiting patiently for some drops of water from that rain cloud. So that is our business, right? We are overriding, going back to our original discussion, right? Overriding the experience of our senses. But looking up to the high sky, you know, what is the version of the scripture, of the guru, of the saints? What is their version of reality? What's my version of reality versus their version of reality? What's the roadmap that they've laid out for us? And I'm going to follow that. And I'm waiting patiently, right? I cannot clearly see or feel that higher reality at present. But I'm waiting for that because I have faith. I have faith. I have faith, and it also makes sense too. And we're also smiling. I was remembering too, our Gurudev, he would talk about that sometimes, how it's important to smile. And one of our devotees, she had a letter from Srila Sridhar Maharaj once, and he told the story of you know, Krishna, when Mother Jashoda is trying to tie him, and he's giving her a hard time, right? By his mystic power, the rope is always 2 fingers too short, right? And she's pulling more and more rope, and she's huffing and she's puffing and she's sweating, and her makeup is smearing, her hair is coming undone, and then finally Krishna allows himself to be bound by the love of his mother. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, in one letter to one devotee, he told her, he said, he mentioned specifically that throughout that whole process, Mother Jashoda was always smiling. It was Srileka, she told me that. She was always smiling. I was remembering that today. How wonderful, right? Krishna may test us in many ways, right? And give us trouble in many ways, but we will still smile, right? Because we know Krishna's mercy is behind. We know there's a silver lining to every cloud. And we know there's light at the end of the tunnel. So we are always hopeful. That was what our Gurudev used to say. I am always hopeful. If we're feeling that the wave, that transcendental wave, you know, the play of Krishna's wave in the background, then we must smile. We know the Lord's presence is behind everything. His grace is behind everything. And what, you know, when we zoom out and try to understand what a great, grand gift this is, then we must smile. We must smile. And about Haras Talker, you know, I don't know exactly what he was chanting, you know, but one thing that is nice to remember, our Gurudev, he made this point about Haras Talker, that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's for those who don't know, and I'm happy to see everyone who's joined. Ati Sundari is here, and Subal Prabhu's joining us from Ukraine, Govindaland, Julian's here, Brajabal is tuned in, Gangalila's here. So Haras Talker, he's known as the Namacharya. You know, he's the person who, he actually began the distribution of the Kirtan movement even before Mahaprabhu. And we can also mention, right, that Mahaprabhu likes the Lord. His nature is he likes to glorify his devotees. Bhaktira Gaurava Kodi, Bhakta Pranadan. This in this song we sing during Kartik, it's listing so many names of Mahaprabhu, so many names of Krishna. And this is one that he likes to glorify his devotees. He is the glorifier of his devotees. This is his nature. So he likes to put his devotees in higher position than himself, right? So he puts as the head of his line, he poses as the grand disciple, you know, of Madhavendra Puri is like accepted essentially as the origin of Mahaprabhu's lineage, right? Gaudiya lineage. And Mahaprabhu is appearing as the disciple of his disciple. Right? And then what is Mahaprabhu's main, you know, public duty in coming to this world? Spreading the Sankirtan movement. But he doesn't actually start it himself, right? He sends Haras Talker ahead of him, right? So he's always putting his devotees in higher positions than himself. And so Haras Talker, and he's born in a Muslim family, which is another very interesting point, right? So he spent his whole life like spreading the glories of the holy name, and sometimes literally risking his life, right? He's like one generation before Mahaprabhu, and in our scripture Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's quite a few sections that are dedicated to describing him and his pastimes, and you know, he goes through all kinds of situations, and he attracts a lot of envy, and different persons tried to bring him down in different ways. But one interesting point is, then there's one chapter. There are actually a few chapters which are just about Haras Talker, which shows you how important he is. But there's one chapter in the final section of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is just describing how he departs from this world, which is a very bittersweet description, very, very touching description of how he leaves the world. And it is also one kind of special mercy that he leaves the world before Mahaprabhu, because he doesn't want to live in this world without his beloved Lord. That's a very painful thing, right? To live without the person who's your life and soul, who's your everything. And so he makes this special request of Mahaprabhu, please let me leave this world before you. You've performed so many wonderful leelas in this world, but I don't want to see that leela, he said. I don't want to see that leela. So please let me leave before you. And then Mahaprabhu, he accepts that. And then there's a description of him as he's leaving this world and surrounded by the Sankirtan party, Mahaprabhu and his associates. But it mentions there specifically that as Haras Talker is leaving this world, he's chanting Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya. And our Gurudev, he mentioned that, his whole life, Haras Talker was chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But then in his last moments, he was chanting Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya. And in that way, he was showing, who Mahaprabhu is, right? He is non-different. Actually, in our Gurudev, he also expressed this very nice point that Mahaprabhu is the form of the Maha Mantra, because Mahaprabhu is the combined form of Shri Shri Radha Krishna. And that Maha Mantra, it is a prayer to Shri Shri Radha Krishna. So that is one interesting point about Haras Talker's chanting. It's very, very beautiful chapter, Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's very Kaviraj Goswami, he's a divine poet, and his words are very striking to the heart. There's this one line where he says, Haras Talker, he tells, it's all very, Chaitanya Charitamrita, my goodness. Words just fail to describe. It's so nuanced, and everything. And Haras Talker expresses his desire to Mahaprabhu. And, first he stops eating, right? And Mahaprabhu wants to know, what is wrong. And he tells him, I don't want to see your pastime of leaving this world. And then Mahaprabhu is first very sorrowful, saying, how can you leave me, without your association, I will be so sad, and how can you leave me like this? And then Haridas is like, I'm just an insignificant insect. If I leave this world, what difference will it make to you? And they're going back and forth like this. And finally, Mahaprabhu tells him, Krishna will fulfill your desire. Mahaprabhu, for the most part, he's never acknowledging his divinity, but he's like, Krishna will fulfill your desire. And then the next day, Mahaprabhu comes with some of his associates, and Mahaprabhu, it just always kills me when I read that line. And then Mahaprabhu, he asks Haridas, what is the news, Haridas? What is the news? Like, what is your decision? Like, what's your final decision? What is the news? Samachar. And then Haridas, Haridas responds. It's like very high level, their way of speaking to one another. It's very high level of discourse, right? Nothing is completely direct, actually. So Mahaprabhu said, what is the news, Haridas? And then Haridas tells him, whatever your grace is upon me, whatever your grace is upon me, like you know what I want, and if you will be so merciful. And then Mahaprabhu starts this grand Sankirtan. And then Mahaprabhu finally he's like holding Haridas in his arms, right? And it describes Haridas's eyes like these two bumblebees, like drinking up the honey from the face of Mahaprabhu, and chanting as he leaves the world, Shri Krishna Jai, Shri Krishna Jai, Shri Krishna Jai. And then Mahaprabhu brings him to the ocean at Puri and bathes him in the ocean. And Mahaprabhu's personally, and this chapter is actually very significant because it's describing Mahaprabhu's like love for Haridas and the glories of Haridas, but it's also seen as like kind of symbolic of the Lord's love for his devotees in general. And there's a tradition actually of chanting this verse, reciting this verse at the when there's a samadhi taking place, like when a great Vaishnava is being placed in samadhi, like after the departure of a great Vaishnava, and there's some samadhi ceremony, then there's a tradition of chanting this chapter that time. So it is very beautiful to consider it from that angle. It is Mahaprabhu showing how much the Lord is showing how much love he has for his devotees, right? He's personally bathing Haridas Thakur in the ocean and personally placing his divine form in the ground. And then personally afterwards, he's going and collecting prasad from all the local shopkeepers and personally arranging a festival. And very beautiful chapter. And there's this one verse there, and Gurudev also quoted it in relation to Srila Sridhar Maharaj saying, Haridas Prithivir Shiromani, saying that Haridas Thakur was the crown jewel of this world. And now without that, this world is jewelless. Doesn't translate so well to English. But that's right. We had to go thinking, how did we get on to that? So we had a question about Haridas Thakur. So, yeah, Haridas Thakur is so glorious, so glorious. And another interesting point about him is that he, as we said, he's known as the Namacharya. Like he was the distributor of the holy name, and he inaugurated the movement of the Sankirtan movement. And he also perfectly demonstrated the mood of someone who will chant the name, right? And if we think of Mahaprabhu's third verse of the Shikshashtakam, right, it's describing the qualities of one who can chant, right? Who is Kirtaniya Sadahadi, right? Who is qualified to always take the name of the Lord. Trinada Pisani Chena, Tadoriva Sahishnina, Amanina Manadena, right? Is more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, who can give all honor to others without expecting for themselves. And Haridas Thakur lived that like to the T, like to the point where you're like, you just want to cry sometimes. Like, why Haridas Thakur? It's too much. He's arrested, because he's in this kind of complicated situation. He's coming from a Muslim family. He's taken to the so-called Hindu religion, right? So he's upsetting Hindus and Muslims. Like the Muslim people are like, hey, like you're supposed to be one of us, and the Hindus are like, hey, not all of them, of course, but some of them, they don't like it. And he's a leader. He's naturally a leader automatically because people can see how glorious he is. right? And we hear there's one incident where a local Muslim ruler, he has some, he has to like go to court, and he's sentenced basically to death, right? He's sentenced to be whipped in something like 22 marketplaces, and which, you would die, a normal person would die after like 2 or 3. And then we hear that these men who were delegated to whip him, they were saying he wasn't dying, and then they're afraid for themselves, right? Or we're going to get in trouble. Haras Talker is actually compassionate upon these men, right? They're going to be in trouble. So he pretends to die, for their sake. I mean, this isn't, this is like a don't try this at home thing. This is a level of humility we don't want to imitate, right? But we worship that. And so he pretends to die, they throw him in a river, and then there's a number of incidents we hear about Haras Talker. Another prominent incident was when the local ruler sent a prostitute to tempt him, right? And his plan was that he said, everyone's calling him a great saint, and he was this local ruler. He was concerned about his popularity, and said, I'll send a prostitute to him, and then I'll expose him, and we'll arrest him, and everyone will know about how degraded he is, right? And Haras Talker, he's always consistent, right? He's just affectionate and compassionate upon everyone. So the prostitute comes, and he's so humble and so tolerant. He says, "Oh, well, I want to satisfy your desire, but I have to finish chanting my japa. So can you please just wait?" But I've taken a vow that I would chant this number of names each day, and please just wait. And when I'm done, I will satisfy your desire. And then the woman sitting there all night waiting. And then finally the dawn comes, and I'm sorry, I only just finished chanting my promised number of rounds. So come again tomorrow night. She comes the next night, same story, right? Then she comes the third night. And then what happens, like, she's been converted, right? Her heart has been purified by hearing the chanting of Haras Talker. And then she apologizes to him and reveals everything to him. So this is Haras Talker. Who can compete with that type of humility, tolerance, and respect?
You have a question.
I have a question here.
Yeah, this Haras Talker, the one who had 3 dreams.
3 dreams?
Am I mixing?
I think you're mixing things up, yeah. 3 dreams.
About Gopal deity.
Oh, that's Madhavendra Puri. He's thinking of Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri, he had this is going this is like 2 generations before, maybe. No, like 1 generation before Haras Talker, 2-3 generations before Mahaprabhu. Yeah, Madhavendra Puri, he's who we mentioned in the beginning. He's actually known as the Prem Ankur, means the sprout of divine love. That he was the first person to reveal in this world the particular mood of devotion, Vrindavan, the mood, the divine love of Vrindavan, this particular mood. Madhavendra Puri was the first person to reveal that in its like beginning stage, and then Mahaprabhu showed that in a more developed form. But yes, we hear how he had this, this extraordinary mercy, right? It's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He received, I think it's 3 dreams with personal instructions from deities, right? The first is when he was in Govardhan, and And he lived like, as was the tradition for sannyasis in that time. They would not stay in a fixed place. They would travel all the time. And Madhavendra Puri, he would, generally, sannyasis, mendicants, they would beg when they need some food. They would beg from some home. Right? This is the tradition in India, that householders, grihastas, they will support, the sadhu folk. But Madhavendra Puri was more extreme, and his nature was that he would not ask anyone for food, and only if someone brought it to him would he take something. Otherwise, he would fast. And so we hear he's on his travels. He comes to Vrindavan at one point, and he's resting under a tree. And there's this young, mysterious cowherd boy who comes to him with a pot of milk, clay pot with milk in it. And he tells him, this wasn't the dream. This was like the immediate reality. This boy came to him with this pot of, oh, the local village ladies, they noticed you hadn't eaten anything. They sent this for you. And then he had a dream, and that boy revealed that he was Gopal Krishnan. And he told him that his deity form was like trapped in, like behind some rocks and bushes on the Govardhan hill. And he said, because this is a time when most of India was under Muslim rule. And some of the rulers, they were very aggressively against the Hindus, and some of them would destroy temples and destroy deities and commit all kinds of atrocities. And so the deities were often moving around or going into hiding. And so this deity was actually established by Vajra, who was, I think, the great grandson of Krishna, right? It's a very ancient deity. And so he appeared in Madhavendra Puri's dream and told him, oh, I've been suffering from the heat and the cold, and I'm so hungry. And please come and rescue me. And this is the Lord's affection, right? This is actually, the Lord doesn't need anything from us. But this is his play, right? And his play of love with his devotees. That is the Lord's mercy upon his devotees. And the power of devotion, right? Shri Krishna Karshini Chasa is the power of devotion to attract the Lord. And one place, Saraswati Thakur, he says, we aspire that we can become that type of devotee, that the Lord may want to see us, right? And our Gurudev mentioned, the first stage is search for Shri Krishna. We are searching after Krishna. But in the second stage, Krishna will search after us. We will search after our service, and Krishna will search after us. So this is the type of devotion of Madhavendra Puri, right? And so he uncovers that deity, he rounds up all the villagers, and he uncovers that deity, establishes his worship. It goes on for some time. And then he has a second dream, right? Where the deity says, oh, I'm still suffering a little from being overheated, and I need this special sandalwood to cool me down. And it's in this Malayan sandalwood, which is in the other side of India, in the Orissa area. And so please go and collect that for me. And so Madhavendra Puri, he arranges for the Gopal D Service to go on, and then he undertakes this very arduous, like difficult journey. And this is before, motor cars and trains, and there's, it's like a bit like the Wild West, right? Going by foot in the Wild West, under the Muslim rule, all kinds of, thieves and rogues, and along the way he has no money. There's all these like toll stations along the way, and it's a very, very difficult task actually that the Lord's given him. But somehow or another he makes it, and he stops at Ramuna, which is just before Puri, which is where the area where he was going. And then in that temple, then actually he had 3 dreams, plus the Lord stole for him too. And then in this temple he stopped at, there's this Gopinath, another deity of Krishna. That deity form is called Gopinath. And they had this very special kheer, like some type of condensed milk or sweet rice for the Lord. And they offered this every day, very exquisitely made. And they offered, I think it was 12 pots. And oh, I see some things in the chat here. Oh, Scarlett's asking. Oh, there's also a, oh, Rupanuga says, it is a feeling I hate to feel. I love it. Is Rupanuga, yeah, he's still here. Hate is a feeling I hate to feel. I guess that Tungarasa says, I guess that 2 can be an Atma and the Paramatma. Maybe this was mentioned. 2 can be an Atma, or I don't know what the context was there. But Paramatma is referring to the Lord. And then Scarlett saying, have understood right, Haras Talker is both Lord Brahma and Prahlad Maharaj. I mean, the way that I've understood it from Srila Sridhar Maharaj is that he is an incarnation or avatar of Lord Brahma. And he refers to him as a kind of functional incarnation of Prahlad. It's not that he's Prahlad, but he's showing some similar type of example as Prahlad, in the sense that he goes through this extreme suffering and shows this beautiful Vaishnava example. Do you have any comments on that, Chinmoy Prabhu?
Yeah, and another point that I know Gurudev and Guru Maharaj have made is that the Lord can reveal himself to, or reveal, knowledge to his devotees in whatever way he wants. So Chaitanya Charitamrita and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami might see things different than Vrindavan Das Thakur, because the Lord was revealing himself in different ways. But I also heard Srila Sridhar Maharaj speak about some people to say that Ramananda Roy is Vishakha, but also say is Arjuna. I think it's a very nice explanation, as you were saying, like, some of the qualities there of Arjuna can be found within Ramananda Roy.
Right. Yeah, that's a very nice connection. Yeah. That example with Arjuna. Right. Okay. But yes, that's also a very nice point, that the Lord will show himself in different ways, right? Because we hear that Vrindavan Das Thakur, he describes Advaita Acharya as Lord Shiva, right? So he has a different vision. But Kaviraj Goswami as Mahavishnu. Anyway, we won't go too deep into that. I'll just quickly, we're coming to the end of our time, I'll just quickly finish the Madhavendra Puri description. So then in this Ramuna temple, they offer this very special kheer, this milk offering to the Lord. And Madhavendra Puri sees that and he thinks, oh, if I could taste a little bit of that, then I would be able to prepare the same thing for my Gopal deity, right? And then he immediately rebukes himself, because he thinks, oh, I'm just thinking about my own tongue. Like, not really thinking about the Lord. And so anyhow, he goes on his way. And then he's like sleeping in a marketplace under a tree or something. Meanwhile, the pujari, he has a dream. The pujari, the priest at that temple, he has a dream in the middle of the night where that Gopinath deity comes to him and says, oh, I secretly hid one of the pots of prasadam, this kheer, because they offered 12 and you only took 11 away, and I secretly kept 1 pot. And I want you to deliver this to my devotee, Madhavendra Puri. And so the priest, the pujari, is so excited. And it always strikes me how he's totally free from envy. like he's just so happy that the Lord is being merciful to his devotee, and he's not thinking, like, hey, I've been serving you all these years. That's what I would be thinking. Like, you never saved any care for me. That's what I would think. Yeah. But he's just so non-envious, and he's so happy, and he wakes up, he goes and has a shower. Actually, specifically mentions he has a shower in the middle of the night before he goes on the altar. And then he finds this pot was hidden under the dress, the clothing of the Lord, runs out into the night shouting, "Oh Madhavapuri, oh Madhavapuri, you are so fortunate. The Lord has personally stolen this kheer for you." And then so Madhavendra is like so embarrassed but feeling so blessed, and he takes that pot and he takes that prasad but he's so humble. He runs away because he's afraid that the news will spread and everyone will come and worship him, right? And the real Vaishnava, the last thing they want is to be worshipped. So he flees from that situation. But of course, it is too late. And it also mentions there that it is the nature of fame to run after people who don't want it. It mentions that there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so anyhow, but this all works in Madhavendra Puri's favor because he's become this kind of celebrity overnight because of this incident, then he gets all this support. And the people hear of his mission to collect the special sandalwood. He gets support from the local king, and they load him up with the sandalwood. He travels back to Ramuna, spends the night there. Then he has another dream from the Lord saying, you know what? I'm actually non-different from the Gopinath deity here. You offer this sandalwood to the deity here, and it will be non-different. You don't have to go to the trouble of carrying however many kgs or pounds of sandalwood it was all the way across to the other side of India. So yes, so that's 3 dreams, right? 3 dreams. And then that deity is known today as Kira Chora Gopinath, the Gopinath who stole the kheer, right? That deity is still known in that way today. So that is one tiny little drop of the glories of Madhavendra Puri. He's very exalted, luminous Vaishnava in our line. I see that Marie has put a question here, but maybe we'll address it next time, if it is a question. It seems strange to me to expect one-to-one correspondence between the characters in the various leelas. If the interactions and dynamics are all the same, why have so many different avatars, incarnations? It makes more sense that the infinite divinities played would consist of myriad combinations and recombinations of characteristics and roles played out by his associates in different ways. Beautiful. You're a poet, Marie. Okay. Should we close there for today? Any last words, Chinmoy Prabhu?
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Deva Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Dakshak Shri Hardeva Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, all the assembled devotees ki Jai, Shri Haras Talker ki Jai. Actually, our Gurudev mentioned that whenever we do kirtan, we should say Jai to Haras Talker, because he's the giver, the first giver of this kirtan. So Jai Namacharya Shri Haras Talker ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, all the assembled devotees and spiritual seekers ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanande. Hari Bol.
Jai Vishakha Devi Dasi ki.
Jai.
Dandavad, pranams to everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.